What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 15 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. And if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. If you guys want early, exclusive access to these NFL game breakdowns and advice on betting, well, that's the place to do it. You can also become a member and get personalized fantasy football advice from yours truly. All the details in the description, but for now, let's get right into it. We kick things off on Thursday Night Football with the matchup between the New York Jets at the Baltimore Ravens. And right from the get-go, in the start of Week 15, we have got one of the easiest and most sure thing games out of the batch because the Jets right now are at 5-8. Look, they got a nice win over the Miami Dolphins. That game was pretty much a coin flip, could have gone either way. But the Baltimore Ravens, that's really the storyline here. They're 11-2. They're the number one seed in the AFC. Lamar Jackson is the MVP frontrunner, and a lot of people are saying, well, the Baltimore Ravens probably now the favorites to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC if they haven't been saying it for a while. And this game is in Baltimore. This is going to be a absolute beatdown here, folks. And this is the largest spread of the week at minus 14.5. For Baltimore, it should honestly be higher. I think they're going to win by at least 3 touchdowns. I think there's going to be 3 players here, or I guess 3 groups, I should say, that have a huge impact for the Ravens. The quarterback, obviously Lamar Jackson, then also Mark Ingram, and then also the Baltimore Ravens defense. I think they're going to make it a hellish night for one Sam Darnold. I wouldn't be surprised if he's seeing ghosts yet again for the second time this season. But to me, this Ravens game versus the Jets, I see it going kind of similarly to what we saw with the Ravens versus the Rams. I think the Ravens are pretty much going to get in the end zone, if not score, on every single one of their drives, or at least on the majority of them. I wouldn't be shocked if Lamar Jackson is being sat once the fourth quarter begins and we see some RG3 garbage time. So, look, all signs point towards the Ravens winning here. Don't overthink it. It's a slam dunk. One of the most confident picks you can make during the week, not only outright, but also on the spread. Next up, we've got the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. Divisional clash, in fact, the game that kicked off the 2019 season. These two teams meet for the second time now. The Bears are at 7-6. Technically, they have a shot at the playoffs, but if I'm a Bears fan, look, I'm not getting my hopes up. It's pretty much impossible because the Bears have to win out, and that includes a schedule versus the Packers, versus Kansas City, and versus the Vikings, and along the way, they have to get help from Minnesota and the Rams. So again, probably wouldn't get my hopes too much there, Bears fans. But hey, let's look at the positives. They're coming off a great win over the Dallas Cowboys, probably their best win of the season. Yet again, you look at their last couple of games, it was victories versus the Lions, versus the Giants, and versus the dysfunctional Cowboys. So how much stock can you really put into that? Then you've got the Green Bay Packers. They're 10-3. They're leading the NFC North, but are they really as good as their record would indicate? Because last week, even though they beat the Redskins, they didn't do it in all that impressive fashion. Aaron Rodgers didn't look all that great, but I wouldn't put, again, too much stock into that because I said it last week. Even if Rodgers doesn't have a great game, it's probably because the rushing attack was able to carry the Packers to the win, and that's exactly what happened. But I do think in this game versus the Bears, where I anticipate this to be a close contest since the Bears are playing better, they're going to need a complete effort from Rodgers and from that rushing attack if Green Bay wants to win. Now, I will say, I do have the Packers winning a very tight game here, something in the realms of maybe 21-17, 20-17. And I don't think it's going to be all that high scoring either because the Bears defense has been good. Now they get Akeem Hicks back, probably the second best defensive player on that squad other than Khalil Mack. Now, it does hurt a little bit that Roquan Smith was lost for the remainder of the year, but defensive lineman versus linebacker, probably the D lineman a little bit more important in that scheme for the Bears. While the Green Bay Packers did a little bit dinged up on that offensive line, and I do think they're going to feel the effect of Akeem Hicks, even though he's probably going to be on a snap count. But at the end of the day, this game comes down to Mitch Trubisky versus Aaron Rodgers, and maybe even if Trubisky does have more weapons, since for Rodgers it's Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, You have to look at the guy that's distributing the ball to those weapons, and I'll take Aaron Rodgers over Mitch Trubisky any given day of the week. I realize Trubisky has looked good using his legs these last couple of weeks, but I don't think the Packers are going to allow him to do that. They're going to force him to beat them with his arm, kind of like they did in week 1, and he proved he couldn't. So, again, I expect probably a close game, but at the end, Mitch Trubisky comes up short, and the Packers win this game. It'll be very tight. It'll be very close. I like the Packers outright. Look, Rodgers in the month of December at Lambeau is almost unbeatable. It's a heck of a home field advantage. Packers outright, but on the spread, -4.5. I'm actually going to take the Bears there. I think the Packers win, but it'll probably be by around 4 or 3 points. Next up, we've got the New England Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals. And cheating scandal or no cheating scandal, the Patriots don't need any additional help in beating the Bengals. That's how much of a mismatch this is. I feel like I don't have to even say anything about this game. The only reason that there's a conversation here is because the Patriots right now are 10-3. They're losers of 2 straight. And let's be honest, they got screwed by the refs last week versus the Chiefs. No telling how that game would have gone if they were awarded a rightful touchdown. And now they're the number 2 seed in the AFC. People were writing them off. And it seems like this happens every single year for the Patriots, again, last season. But then you get to the playoffs and the Patriots turn it on. They make it to the AFC Championship as always. They make it to the Super Bowl. And then Tom Brady gets another ring. And I think the Bengals here are going to be an afterthought for the Patriots. They're going to come out pissed that they got screwed by the refs, that they're losers of 2 straight, that people are writing them off, and they're going to take it out on the Bengals, who are 1-12, again, back to their losing ways. And Brady's going to figure it out. The rushing attack is going to run all over this defense. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And I think we're going to see a game from the Patriots similar to what we saw at the start of the season, where they were absolutely destroying teams. Now, obviously, that was in part because of the defense, and that does imply that I believe this Patriots defense will get back to their winning ways and absolutely make it a nightmarish day for Dalton, for Mixon, for Boyd, for pretty much the 3 players that matter on that offense. I like the Patriots to win this game, no problem. The spread +9.5. It should be higher. I'm going to take the Patriots outright and on the spread. Moving on, we've got the Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. Divisional clash. The Broncos 5-8, coming off probably their biggest win and surprise win of last week as they demolished the Houston Texans. Great defensive effort, but we knew they had that in them. It was more so the play of Drew Lock for the second week in a row that stood out. And now they've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 9-4, coming off probably their biggest win of the season versus the New England Patriots. And the question is, will the Broncos, being a divisional opponent, knowing the Chiefs pretty well, be able to hang in there versus the Kansas City Chiefs, who have had issues in the past? But I'm here to tell you that I think that the Chiefs are peaking at the right time. And don't look now, but these last few weeks, this defense of the Chiefs has improved. And all of a sudden, they're creating turnovers. They're limiting opposing offenses when it comes to scoring, and they're setting up their own offense in great positions. And I do think there's something to say about a divisional game for a rookie quarterback on the road in Kansas City versus an improved defense to make me think that the Broncos are going to struggle here. And for what it's worth, the few times the Broncos have failed to cover this season was in an earlier blowout loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Since then, I do think the Broncos have gotten better, but I also think the Chiefs have gotten better. Patrick Mahomes, he's back healthy. He avoided an injury scare with that hand. It's only a bruised hand versus the Patriots, no breaks or anything like that. And even though there's injuries to the running back spot, as long as you've got Tyreek, Travis Kelce, Hardman, those guys out there, and most importantly, a healthy Patrick Mahomes, you're fine. So what I'm trying to say is, outright, I think this is almost a lock. Now, obviously not as confident as the other locks we probably advised you to take, but still, Chiefs at home versus the young quarterback. I like them to win this game. On the spread is where it gets interesting. -10.5. I'm going to give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to rattle the rookie quarterback, and they'll be able to cover the spread. I'm definitely not as confident picking the spread as I'm picking the Chiefs outright. So I don't fault you if you take the Broncos there. I think it's a very real possibility that they cover, especially if the Chiefs defense fails to show up. So my advice here would be look at the outright pick and go with the Chiefs. If you're feeling a little bit frisky, then you can go ahead and explore the spread pick, which at this point in time, I have the Chiefs covering. Next up, we have got the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Detroit Lions. The Bucks are 6-7 coming off a shootout victory over the Indianapolis Colts. But you could ask at what cost, as they lost Mike Evans for the remainder of the season. And that's a tough blow to that offense. But I still believe that they have the pieces to be a potent offense moving forward. And especially when you consider that they are playing the Detroit Lions defense. The Lions are 3-9-1 and losing last week to the Minnesota Vikings, but hey, they didn't get blown out or anything like that. In fact, they covered on the spread. Now, for the Lions, they've got questions at the quarterback position, but hey, at least you know that you can throw it against this Bucs secondary, and they've got offensive weapons. They've got Marvin Jones, they've got Kenny Golladay, they've got Danny Amendola. So you're really going to see whoever is at quarterback, I personally think it'll be Blau, try to sling it versus this Bucs secondary, but it's going to have to be solely on his shoulders. And even though he's going to be going up against Jameis Winston, who kind of hurt his hand last week, but is expected to play, I got to give the edge to the Jameis Winston camp here because, look, I realize with Winston what you're going to get is a bunch of yards and then a couple touchdowns and a bunch of interceptions. But I'd still rather have Jameis Winston over Blau or any quarterback not named Stafford for the Detroit Lions. I've got more faith in Winston being able to get something done than I do the Lions offensively. Also, I do think the Bucs defense is better, especially against the run. So I'm going to take them here on the road to beat the Detroit Lions. Even without Mike Evans, they find other weapons, whether it is Watson, the unknown wide receiver, Godwin, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. There are options. I think potentially here we could see a Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber game versus this Detroit Lions defense. If that happens, then I think picking the Bucs is almost a lock, because when their rushing attack gets going is when they're really potent offensively. So I'm going to take the Bucs outright to win this game. The spread plus 3.5 for the Lions. I don't think that number is big enough, so I will take the Bucs on the spread as well. Next up, we have got the Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. And only a couple of weeks back, I wouldn't have thought that this is the most meaningful game of the week, but honestly, it is. Both these teams are at 8-5, and either one could win the division, and either one has a real chance at the wild card in the AFC. Right now, the Texans, coming off that brutal loss versus the Denver Broncos, where they just fell flat, and we said watch out for that. After a great victory over the New England Patriots, they could be in for a trap game, and wouldn't you know, that's exactly what happened. While the Tennessee Titans, they beat the Raiders, and with Ryan Tannehill under center, is there any team that is hotter in the NFL than the Tennessee Titans? I would argue no. Ryan Tannehill has, for one thing, made himself a lot of money. That's the one thing that we know for a fact. Whether this thing is going to last into the future, I don't know. But right now it's working, and I think this will be a very high-scoring game. The Texans' defense leaves a lot to be desired. Offensively, the Texans have the pieces to score on you. Same with the Titans. They've got explosive pieces. Derrick Henry, even though he's not the best pass catcher, he can still run wild on you, as he's shown these last couple of weeks. This Texas defense, I don't know if it poses that big of an opposition, and I think this will be a back-and-forth game. This is the first time these two teams are playing this year. That's absolutely insane, which makes this game so important, because you could argue whoever wins this game probably has the inside track on winning the division and hosting a playoff game, while the other has to take their chances at a non-guaranteed wild card spot. Now, with these games being so close and these teams playing twice in the calendar year, I usually go by the philosophy of going with the split series and giving the home team the advantage. And that's what I'm going to do in this game here. I'm going to take the Titans outright. If you force me to identify exactly why, I think offensively they're a little bit more consistent than what the Texans have shown us these last couple of weeks. So I feel a little bit better about that. I think defensively, even though they've gotten burned a couple times, they've also got some more pieces. The offensive line a little bit better than the Texans. But I still don't think the separation of talent, the gap, is all that big. That's why when these two teams play later again this year, I'd probably have to give the Texans the edge. Right now, I'm going to take the Titans outright, but the spread -2.5, it's really low, but I could see this game going either way. So I'm going to hedge my bets and take the Texans on the spread, and I advise you guys, if you guys feel one way or the other about it, to potentially hedge your bets as well. Moving on, we've got the Miami Dolphins at the New York Giants. The Dolphins, 3-10, coming off that narrow loss versus the Jets, which could have gone either way and maybe would have gone in favor of the Dolphins if pretty much all of their offensive weapons didn't get injured in that game. While the New York Giants are 2-11, and for a while it looked like they could beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and we said, watch out, with Eli Manning under center, they're going to give the Eagles, in what was supposed to be a bad weather game, which proved to be true, kind of a scare. And it took a fourth quarter late touchdown and overtime for the Eagles to win that game. And Eli Manning, again, set to start in place of the injured Daniel Jones. Potentially could be his last start in New York of his career. It's a nice little storyline, but honestly, the biggest storyline here is all about draft positioning come next year, because both these teams probably going to be picking in the top 5, so who wants to win this game? If you're someone in the front office, the answer is probably, well, if there was a way for both of us to lose, that's probably the option we'd go with. And it's one of the reasons I'm kind of struggling to go ahead and pick a clear-cut winner. Now, if the Dolphins, you could guarantee me that they'd be healthier, even though it's kind of trending in that way. Devontae Parker and Wilson getting in some practices, there's a pretty good chance they do play. If they don't, obviously the Dolphins are going to be very limited offensively. They're going up against a Giants defense that can be beat. So there's a lot to like there. While for the New York Giants, look, Eli Manning, not as explosive and good on his feet as Daniel Jones, but he's a smarter quarterback. Now, Evan Ingram not going to play here again, but that's been the trend for a while. But I do think if there were ever a game for Saquon Barkley to come out of his slump, it would be versus this Miami defense. And I think that's the reason why at the end of the day, I'm giving the edge to the New York Giants. I think they're going to be able to establish the rushing attack that's going to take pressure off of Eli Manning, and they're going to be able to beat the Dolphins in that way. I just don't think the Dolphins right now have a running back that can kind of shoulder the load and take the pressure off of Ryan Fitzpatrick the way that the Giants do. Defensively, both these teams can be beat. This is a home game for the Giants. I don't put too much stock into that. Eli versus Ryan Fitzpatrick. Honestly, I have more faith in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm going to tentatively pick the Giants outright at home to win because I think they're a little bit healthier, and I think Saquon Barkley is the difference maker. But on the spread, I actually really like the Miami Dolphins here. -3.5 for the Giants. If they do win, I don't think it's going to be by a blowout, so I'm going to take the Dolphins on the spread. Next up, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Redskins. Divisional clash, probably in the worst division in the NFL, dubbed the NFC least, and rightfully so at this point. The Eagles 6-7, coming off a game that could have gone either way, let's be honest, versus the New York Giants. They needed a comeback in the game and then help in overtime to win. But I guess maybe you give them a pass considering the weather and considering every single pass catcher on that team got hurt for the Eagles. It was so bad that Josh McCown was ready to go in for wide receiver for them. So just keep that in mind. The Redskins, they're 3-10. They're coming off a loss versus the Green Bay Packers. We all predicted that that would be the case. But the question is, can they potentially hang in this game versus this Philadelphia defense that made Eli Manning look like he could still ball out in the first half of that game in a rainstorm? Maybe. The Eagles right now are so injured, guys. Alshon Jeffrey down for the year. Nelson Aguilar probably won't play in this game. Who else is there? It's the Zach Ertz show. That's all that Carson Wentz has left at this point in time. Lane Johnson also got injured last week versus the Giants. That's a huge blow for that offensive line. The secondary is no good for the Eagles. If there was ever a game for Dwayne Haskins to be able to throw a couple balls and kind of hang in there versus the Eagles, it would be this game. I know it sounds crazy, and I don't believe in the Redskins. Not at all. I don't think they're a good team. But I think they can hang in there on the spread. The spread plus 5.5. I would have liked to see a little bit higher. I would have then been a lot more comfortable taking the Redskins. But I'm still going that way, honestly. I think Haskins can go ahead and keep the Redskins in there. I realize it's going to come down to his arm because the Eagles are good at stopping the run. So Geis and Adrian Peterson maybe are an afterthought. But the Eagles can be beat, guys. And offensively, they're so hobbled. If they had their pieces, I would be a lot more comfortable in taking the Eagles outright and on the spread. But because of the injuries and because of the matchup defensively, I'm going to take the Eagles outright. But on the spread, I'm actually going to take the Washington Redskins. Next up, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at the Carolina Panthers. The Seahawks 10-3. Bewildering loss versus the LA Rams last week, but I guess you could say it was a divisional clash in the NFC West, and crazy things happened there, as we know. But still, Seattle kind of struggled offensively, didn't look all that great. Favorably speaking, however, they now have a bounce-back game versus the Panthers. And that's all you really need to know here. The Panthers are 5-8, lost again last week, blown out versus the Falcons. So much for thinking that team would come out energized and try to win a game for Ron Rivera, who got let go the week before. The Panthers are a joke at this point in time. The wheels have fallen off, and they can't hang in there even with bad teams. And the Seattle Seahawks, even though they're coming off a loss, don't get it wrong, they are a contender in the NFC. For them, the biggest thing here is getting this win so that they stay in contention with the 49ers for the NFC West and don't have to settle for a wild card spot. And I don't think it'll be an issue here. The Seahawks have had the Panthers number for the last couple of years. At one point in time, this was somewhat of a rivalry since these two teams would play so often, but not really as of late, especially not with Cam Newton being injured. Kyle Allen continues to show that he's not the quarterback of the future for the Panthers. Too turnover prone, too reliant on Christian McCaffrey. The defense is a shell of itself. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They're going to get exposed by Russell Wilson. I anticipate we're going to see a huge game from Russell Wilson, but more importantly, from Chris Carson. I think he runs wild on this Panthers team that can't stop the run at all. Seattle all the way here. I'm putting all the money I have on the Seattle Seahawks, outright and on the spread. The Panthers plus 5.5 on the spread. That spread should be higher. It should be double digits. I feel extremely confident in this pick. Seattle is going to win outright. That is a guarantee. Maybe you don't feel confident enough about the spread. Sure, wacky things can happen, garbage time. But believe me, Seattle, even though it's on the road, they're going to dominate the Panthers. Next, we go to the Cleveland Browns at the Arizona Cardinals. The Browns, 6-7. Nice little win over the Bengals last week, but unfortunately, it doesn't mean all that much in the grand scheme of things. They blew too many meaningful games earlier on in the year for them to now be in the competition for postseason play in the AFC. So much for all those on paper expectations. While the Arizona Cardinals 3-9-1, look, you knew it was going to be a struggle for them this year. They were still a very young team. Defensively, there's a lot of holes. So this kind of record is to be expected. But last week, even in losing versus the Steelers, you saw some things that you liked. And I anticipate that'll be the case again here versus the Browns. Probably in a losing effort, but we're going to see the Cardinals do some nice things, and we're going to see a decent game from Kyler Murray. Now, this game is the Baker versus Kyler, or Baker versus Kingsbury match, depending on how you decide to look at it. But honestly, it doesn't matter. The Browns have been a circus nonstop since the beginning of the year. Now, you're hearing Baker talk about how the Browns medical guys failed to treat Odell Beckham's injury the right way. They could have been treated better. Now people were questioning whether Odell's going to be back with this team. It really is a shame because offensively they're so talented. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. As inconsistent as they've been all season long, I think they can beat the Cardinals primarily because in the few games that they have won this year, it's been versus plus defensive matchups. And I think this is exactly one of those games. I think Baker's going to have a good game. And for the Browns, rely on Chubb, throw it to Kareem Hunt. It'll probably be the Jarvis Landry show as it's been. Odell's not at 100%, so I don't anticipate anything all that much from him. I do think the Browns' defense, even though it's not all that great, is better than that of the Cardinals. So I will take Cleveland outright, as crazy as it seems, but I think it'll be a close game. Like I said, the Browns have been inconsistent. The spread plus 2.5 for the Cardinals, not all that much, which is going to be the reason why I hedge my bets here and take the Cardinals. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the day they beat the Browns. The Browns, like I said before, you never know what you're going to get from them. Depends on what type of game Baker Mayfield decides to have and whether the line decides to block or not. But I do think they have enough pieces. So outright, I will go with the Browns. But like I said, hedging our bets with Cardinals on the spread. Continuing on, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Oakland Raiders. The Jaguars, 4-9, are coming off a complete embarrassment versus the Chargers, where they got dominated so bad that Phillip Rivers was pretty much not playing come the fourth quarter. Now they face the Raiders in Oakland. Raiders 6-7, and they're also coming off a loss of their own in a game that their best offensive weapon wasn't available to them in Josh Jacobs. He should play here, however. But more importantly, for the Raiders, they are who we thought they were, folks. Offensively, they're inconsistent. Defensively, they're really in trouble. Just injuries, and they're still young. They still need to develop. Below 500 now. In this game, even though they are favored, which I think should be the case, I don't think they should be favored by 6.5. They're minus 6.5 on the spread right now. I think that's a little bit too high considering the defense. And considering I think the Jaguars have the best offensive weapon out of both these teams in Leonard Fournette. I think Fournette can go ahead and have a huge day and have a big say in who wins this game. Now, the reason I don't quite think that'll be enough is because I don't think he can shoulder the load by himself. We've seen the Jaguars also struggle against the run, so I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Jacobs has a huge game, but Fournette a little bit healthier than Jacobs. Gardner Minshew, I expect, will have a bounce-back game here, but DJ Shark's status a little bit concerning, probably won't play, so we'll see what the Jaguars do without their best pass catcher. The Raiders, we need to see them more consistent. They need to get Waller and Tyrell Williams back involved in their offensive distribution of the football. Defensively, we know that the Raiders aren't going to show up, so this could be a very high-scoring game here, folks. A lot of yards, a lot of scores. We'll see. I'm going to tentatively take the Raiders outright just because I think that they have the advantage at the quarterback position. But on the spread, I think you have to go with the Jaguars here. The Raiders have let up a bunch of points. They've been inconsistent, and the spread already kind of high. They haven't really blown out anyone. Almost a touchdown at minus 6.5. I'm taking the Jaguars on the spread. Wouldn't be all that shocked if they end up pulling off the upset and beating the Raiders outright. Next up, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at the LA Chargers. The Vikings are 9-4, coming off a nice victory over the Lions. Maybe not as impressive as you would have liked to see, but hey, they did what they had to do. They ran it with Dalvin Cook and played good defense, and that'll go ahead and be a formula that'll work versus below-average teams. Then the Chargers, 5-8, coming off a demolition of the Jaguars where they ran it all over them. And Phillip Rivers even got some rest in that game in the fourth quarter. But now the Chargers host the Vikings, and that's a different story compared to the Jaguars, especially defensively, and I think that's why you have to give the edge to the Vikings here, on top of the fact that the Chargers are so inconsistent and so hot and cold. Vikings also expected to get Adam Thielen back. That'll open things up offensively for them. We know Dalvin Cook's going to do his thing. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL, regardless of matchups. Kirk Cousins, since he got called out at the beginning of the year, has been extremely efficient as well. So that's another positive for the Vikings. The Chargers, I mean, if you want to give them credit, they have just as many, if not more, weapons offensively, but they're just so hot and cold. Phillip Rivers struggles with turnovers, and defensively, they show up from time to time. Pretty much as a unit, this team is all over the place. But the one thing I do know that's almost a lock is that the Chargers are going to be in this game, and they're likely going to get their hearts broken. But it'll be close, and they'll have a chance to win for what that's worth. I'm going to take the Vikings outright. I think they're the better team. You know, they've found a way to win those close games, which you can't really say for the Chargers. But I'm going to go with the Chargers on the spread. Now, I know it's only plus 2.5, but call me crazy. I think the Chargers keep it competitive. They've beaten a couple NFC North opponents in the Bears, in the Packers. Maybe they can make it 3 here. Likely not, but I do think they give the Vikings a scare, make them work for it. I'm taking the Chargers on the spread. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the San Francisco 49ers. The Falcons 4-9, coming off a dominant win over the Panthers, but, take that with a grain of salt because it is the Panthers. While the 49ers 11-2, coming off the game of the year versus the New Orleans Saints. Forget about defense that game. It was all about offense. Maybe the coming out party for Jimmy Garoppolo. Absolutely sensational game, back and forth. And Robbie Gould winning it for the 49ers. George Kittle going beast mode. And the 49ers at 11-2, reclaiming the NFC West. That is the most important thing here. That's the storyline, because now they will yet again have a bye week as of this point in time over the Seattle Seahawks. And look, this game back in San Fran, maybe you could say it could be a trap game for the 49ers coming off that huge victory. And to some extent, I agree, but outright, I gotta go with the 49ers. Let's break it down a little bit. For the Falcons, they lost Calvin Ridley for the remainder of the season versus the Panthers. That's a big blow offensively, but I still think they have enough pieces and pass catchers to go ahead and facilitate a good performance from Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Austin Hooper, Gage, Devonta Freeman. But that offensive line of the Falcons will really be tested by the 49ers D-line, and I think that'll be difference maker here. I just think the 49ers pretty much win at every single battle throughout that line there. However, the big loss for the 49ers, they came out with several of them versus the Saints at the center position, at the DB position, and I do think that could have something to say about the spread, at least in this game. All of a sudden, the 49ers defense banged up, and maybe it could be exposed a little bit here versus a potent Falcons offense. Say what you will, but Matt Ryan can still sling it, and he's got weapons. So I do think the Falcons maybe hang in this game for a little while, but at the end, I will pick the 49ers. Defensively, the Falcons can be had, and I'm sure Garoppolo and company can have a successful outing versus the Falcons defense if they just did it versus New Orleans in New Orleans. Defensively here is really going to be where it's interesting. I want to see what the 49ers look defensively with some of those injuries. I still think it'll be enough to beat the Falcons, but the spread minus 10.5, a little bit high for me. I think the Falcons are going to surprise some people and cover on the spread. Next, we have got the LA Rams at the Dallas Cowboys. The Rams, 8-5, continue to keep their slim playoff hopes alive as they took down the Seattle Seahawks last week in probably their most impressive victory of the year. And it's crazy what'll happen when you get Todd Gurley involved and he becomes a focal point of that offense. It's almost like we've been saying that since week 1 for the Rams. But go figure, they finally decided to take the training wheels off of Gurley. It does also help that guys like Higbee and Woods are also contributing offensively. While the Dallas Cowboys, 6-7, even though they host this game, how much faith do you have in them? They got absolutely blown out by the Bears last week. The final score with some garbage time was made to look respectable, but the Cowboys were thoroughly dominated. They couldn't stop Mitch Trubisky. They made him look like a Pro Bowler. That's how bad they played. Well, I'm not saying that the Cowboys can't surprise the Rams and show up and win this game in Dallas. I mean, they are favored here, which is almost kind of crazy at minus 1.5. But do you have any faith in that happening? I mean, right now, the way these two teams are trending, the Rams are trending upwards, while the Cowboys, well, not even close. for all the talent they have, they can't get it going. For all the statistical categories they lead in offensively in their top 5 or whatever, defensively for all the stars they have, it just hasn't translated to wins. And I don't think it's going to happen here versus the Rams. Unless defensively they shut down Gurley, then maybe then. But I'm going to take the Rams. I think they've kind of figured some things out as of late. Todd Gurley continues to stay involved. It opens things up for Jared Goff. It's crazy to think that when they have success rushing the football, it takes pressure off Goff, and he looks more like the guy he did last year, and then the Rams play better. Defensively, look, neither one of these two teams are anything all that special. Like I said, it really is going to depend what Dallas team shows up here. It's very possible if the good version of that team shows up that they win this game. But right now, I haven't seen enough evidence that'll happen this week. So I'm taking the Rams outright. And since the Cowboys are favored on the spread, we're going the Rams there as well. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bills 9-4, coming off that tough loss versus the Baltimore Ravens, but we kind of knew the more complete team would win, and that was the case. The Steelers 8-5, nice victory as they should have versus the Arizona Cardinals. And maybe this is the second most meaningful AFC playoff type of implication game behind the Houston Texans and Tennessee Titans, because both these teams right now have something to say about those 2 wild card spots. So very meaningful in Pittsburgh. In fact, the Steelers are favored at -2.5, which kind of has me scratching my head. Now, I do think these two teams are kind of similar. Defensively, they're above average. Offensively, they've got some limitations, some inconsistencies. They want to have success on the ground to set up the remainder of their offense that is governed by maybe not the most prototypical pocket passing quarterbacks, but the big difference to me here is in the quarterbacks themselves, because I think Josh Allen is leaps and bounds better than Duck Hodges for the Steelers, who will be under center for them. Josh Allen has progressed as a passer this year, but he still has some room for improvement. And the Bills are healthier than the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, again, Juju Smith, will he play, won't he play? You could say the same thing about James Conner. I think you got to give the Bills the edge here. Offensively, I think they're more complete. I think you can rely on them more so. And if they happen to jump out to a quick early lead, this game could be a blowout win for them, because the Steelers are not made to come back from a deficit. But considering the two defenses you have here, I think this will be a lower scoring game that'll be close, maybe something in the realms of 20-17. But I do see Buffalo winning here. I think Josh Allen over Hodges is the difference, and I like Allen, what he can do with his legs and the weapons that he has. So I'll take the Bills outright and on the spread, since the Steelers are -2.5 there. Finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the Indianapolis Colts at the New Orleans Saints. The Colts 6-7, coming off that shootout loss versus the Bucs, where they came up just short, which has kind of been the story for them this last month as they've fallen out of playoff contention in the AFC. While the Saints 10-3, they're still very much in playoff contention in the NFC, but that loss versus the 49ers, heartbreaking, really tough for them, as they're still fighting for one of the top 2 seeds in a bye week. Now they're neck and neck with the Green Bay Packers, so they need this win. But look, there's no way I see the Saints losing 2 in a row, especially versus the Colts. I think we all know the Saints are the more complete team, especially offensively. Now, I don't think we're going to see an offensive explosion like we did versus the 49ers. I don't think Drew Brees is going to be on fire, but I still think that Drew Brees will do his thing, and then the running attack will take over, and the Saints will kind of blow it open late in the game. And on the flip side, I don't think we're going to see defensively the Saints struggle. I think that was more so a blip, and I think they will have a bounce back performance there. Now, losing Davenport does hurt, but they still have the pieces, and they've got the ultimate trump card in that New Orleans home field advantage. I like the Saints to win this game. The spread a little bit high, -9.5. But like I said, I think the Saints come out here, make a statement. No way they lose 2 in a row. They win outright and also cover on the spread. So with that, we finish up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, we start on Thursday Night Football. The Jets at the Ravens. Give me the Ravens all day long. I think we all know that this is going to be a domination by the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, that Baltimore Ravens defense. That is going to be the trio that gets it done. Next, New England Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't care if the Patriots were cheating or not. They don't need any game film to beat the Bengals. Tom Brady is going to silence some critics in this win. The Patriots defense, more importantly, will go ahead and have a big day. Give me the Patriots. Continuing on, Philadelphia at the Washington Redskins. I'll take the Philadelphia Eagles. As injured as they are, I still like them to beat the Redskins. Maybe they won't cover on the spread, but I do think they are the better team. Next, Seattle at Carolina. I'm taking the Seattle Seahawks, no questions about it. The Panthers defense can't stop anyone. The wheels have fallen off. Kyle Allen is turnover prone. Russell Wilson, Chris Carson have huge days. Atlanta at San Francisco next. Give me the 49ers here. I think it'll be a little bit closer than people think, but ultimately the 49ers with that defense should overwhelm the Atlanta offensive line and get the victory. And finally, Indianapolis at the Saints. Give me the New Orleans Saints at home in a bounce back effort. No way they lose 2 in a row. I like the Saints there. And with that, we wrap up our locks as well. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you guys agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Join the community, all the details in the description, and I'll see you guys in future videos.